Hi guys. Tonight we're setting sail into another time. The lantern light flickers across rippling black water, the ropes creak, and the wind smells of salt and secrets. You stand on the edge of a harbour somewhere in the early 1700s, watching slow shapes glide across the waves. The masts groan like old trees, and somewhere in the dark, a voice hums an old sea tune. You probably won't survive this, but that's part of the adventure. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Tell me where you're watching from and what time it is for you. Now, dim the lights, and let's slip quietly into the world of pirates, where law and loyalty are measured by the moon and the tide. You can almost feel the rough planks beneath your bare feet. The air is warm and sticky, laced with the sharp tang of pitch and whale oil. Lanterns sway on long ropes, casting shadows over barrels stacked with stolen sugar, tobacco, and salted meat. A sleepy parrot shifts on its perch, muttering a few choice insults it must have picked up from the crew. The docks are alive with movement, but no one walks too loudly. There's business being done here, and not all of it is legal. You hear a quiet splash somewhere in the gloom. A dinghy bumps softly against the side of a large brigantine. Figures move, carrying crates wrapped in damp canvas. Coins jingle. Someone mutters a warning. A woman in a patched red coat steps forward, her hair braided with small copper beads. She nods once, and the trade continues. Historians still argue whether ports like this, dark, silent, watchful, were common hiding grounds or rare safe havens. But tonight it feels like half the world is waiting to steal something from the other half. Your breath fogs in the cool dawn air. Out in the harbour, ships lie at anchor, black silhouettes against the rising light. Some are merchantmen bound for London or Lisbon. Others leaner, faster, carry a certain swagger, their rigging unkempt, their decks strangely empty. These are the ships you'll come to know best, the ones that fly the black flag. Not every pirate crew started here, but every legend had to crawl out of a harbour like this one. You listen as dock workers gossip about a new ship that arrived under French colours but seems to have changed her flag 3 times in a single week. That's the sort of clue you learn to notice. The sailors nearby wear mismatched uniforms. A Royal Navy jacket here, a Spanish belt there. Desertion, theft, or spoils of war, it's hard to tell where one life ends and another begins. The world of early 18th century seafaring was harsh. Most sailors lived on wages that barely kept them alive. They were beaten for the smallest mistake, fed rotten rations, and often cheated out of pay. The sea was both their prison and their home. When a man or woman decided to turn pirate, it wasn't always greed that pushed them. Sometimes it was despair, sometimes it was justice, and sometimes it was just that glimmering dream of freedom you can taste in the salt air. You walk farther down the dock, past the tar stench of shipyards and the oily glow of lanterns. Somewhere behind a warehouse door, someone laughs too loudly. A man plays a broken fiddle. You can picture him with missing teeth and a grin that has seen both gallows and gold. The pirates of this so-called golden age weren't the romantic figures painted centuries later. They were survivors, scavengers, and outcasts. Yet somehow, under moonlight, even their shadows seem noble. A passing gust catches your hair, and for a second, you imagine what it must have felt like to be part of that world. No rules except the ones you made. No masters except the sea itself. Freedom, yes, but at a terrible price. One historical account mentions that by 1720, the Caribbean was crawling with over 2,000 active pirates. It sounds like a lot until you realize how small the world really was then. How a single ship's crew could vanish into the vast blue and never be seen again. Somewhere nearby, a bell tolls. It could be a ship's watch changing, or it could be a signal for those preparing to leave under cover of darkness. The sound echoes across the water like a heartbeat. A young boy, maybe 10 or 11, stares longingly at a ship rocking at anchor. His father catches him looking and pulls him back roughly. You can almost hear the warning. The sea doesn't love anyone. You walk along the wharf, letting the soft slap of waves against wood become a rhythm in your mind. The harbour smells of spice, tar, and stale beer. You hear a scrap of conversation in a dozen languages: English, Dutch, French, even bits of Akan from West Africa. Piracy was an international business. Sailors who couldn't speak each other's tongue learned fast, or they didn't last long. And though it's often forgotten, many pirates were formerly enslaved people who seized a second life when the sea offered it. One quirky fact: some pirate crews allowed equal shares to men of any colour long before any government on land even considered the idea. There's a strange comfort in watching the harbour wake. You can almost imagine that time has folded, that you're standing right there beside them, smelling the coffee and the seaweed. A ship's carpenter sharpens his tools. A cat darts across the planks chasing a rat. A sailor hums something soft and sad, the kind of tune you hum when you know tomorrow might never come. As the sun finally peeks over the water, the ships seem to glow. Their masts gleam, and the gulls cry overhead. It's beautiful, but it's also deceptive. You know that once you leave this harbour, you step outside the law forever. The horizon looks free, but it's lined with danger, storms, disease, and warships waiting just out of sight. Still, you can feel that tug inside you, that magnetic pull toward the unknown. Maybe it's greed, maybe it's the promise of control in a world that offers none. Either way, you know that when the tide changes, you'll be on board one of those ships. The creak of ropes, the flap of sails, and the distant cry of anchors aweigh are calling. Tonight, you've seen the harbour of dreams and death. Tomorrow, you'll choose the black path for yourself. The world of merchants and kings will fade behind you, replaced by the endless heartbeat of the waves. The wind catches your sleeve, and for a moment, you swear it whispers your name. The sea waits for you, patient and glittering. At dawn, the light shivers across the water like cold glass. You stand on the dock with a small bundle of belongings at your feet, staring at the ship that might change your life. The choice before you isn't really a choice at all. You could stay ashore, scraping a living, hauling cargo, and sleeping under roofs that leak. Or you could climb that gangplank, take your chances with the wind, and maybe taste something close to freedom. For most who turned pirate, it wasn't about adventure. It was about survival. Sailors in the early 18th century lived brutal lives. Wages were pitiful, punishments were cruel, and food was often mouldy or infested. Captains of merchant ships and navies ruled through fear. Flogging, starvation, and even execution were common. The smell of tar and sweat was the only comfort you had, and the endless monotony of labour could grind down any soul. Historians still debate whether most pirates were rebels by conviction or simply desperate men escaping a hopeless system, but the result was the same. Once you chose that path, you couldn't turn back. You watch a man beside you spit into the sea. His face is drawn and pale from weeks aboard a merchant vessel. He mutters about his captain withholding pay again. Another man, barefoot and missing 2 fingers, laughs bitterly and points toward the ship flying no flag. "They pay fair," he says, "and they don't beat you for breathing too loud." You look closer and notice his earrings, small silver hoops glinting in the light. A little vanity, maybe, or a souvenir from a Spanish wreck. But in his eyes there's something else, something hungry. It wasn't just the poor who turned pirate. Some were sailors betrayed by corrupt officers or privateers who found peace had stolen their income. When wars ended, men who'd spent years raiding enemy ships were suddenly jobless and unwanted. The governments that had once called them heroes now called them criminals, so they kept doing what they knew best only now, for themselves. The decision to become a pirate often started in a moment like this: an overheard conversation in a tavern, a shared bottle, a whispered promise of gold and respect. One quirky tidbit tells of men who flipped a coin to decide whether to desert their ship at the next port. Many didn't even know how to find a pirate crew, until luck or misfortune brought one to them. You might imagine them sitting on rough benches, listening as old salts talked about freedom and fair shares, about ships where every man had a voice. Compared to the tyranny of naval life, that sounded like heaven. You pick up your bundle and feel its lightness. A spare shirt, a knife, maybe a coin or two. Not much to lose, really. Around you, the port begins to stir. The smell of roasting fish mixes with the sharper tang of gunpowder. Somewhere, a bell rings twice. It's time. The man with the missing fingers nods toward the waiting ship. The captain's taking hands, he says. Better hurry before she's full. You step closer and study the vessel. Her hull is scarred, her sails patched, yet she moves in the breeze with a strange grace. A blackbird perches on the bowsprit, watching you as if it knows your decision before you do. The captain appears at the rail, dressed not in finery, but in practical clothes worn smooth by salt. His voice carries clearly across the water. No masters here, he says. No lash. We share what we earn, we vote where we sail, and we fight for one another. But make no mistake, cowards and thieves have short lives with us. You feel a chill even in the heat. It was true that pirate ships were different. They ran on codes of fairness and consent rare for their time. Every major decision, from electing a captain to dividing loot, required a vote. Each man or woman had an equal say. It sounds utopian, but it worked surprisingly well, at least until greed or fear pulled it apart. You take a breath and step forward. The planks creak under your feet. Someone shoves a rough parchment toward you, dotted with names scrawled in all directions. The man holding it grins, revealing a mouth full of gold teeth. Name and mark, he says. If you've got no mark, make one. You glance down at the list. Some names are crossed out, others smeared with ink or blood. The paper smells faintly of rum. The choice is now real. You dip the quill and scratch your name, the letters trembling slightly. The man nods approvingly. Welcome aboard, shipmate. And just like that, you've crossed a line invisible but absolute. As you climb aboard, you notice the crew eyeing you with a mix of curiosity and calculation. Some grin, others shrug. A few look too young, others far too old. But they all share the same wary glint, a sort of feral camaraderie that only comes from living one storm away from death. The deck feels alive beneath your feet. Tar sticks to your soles, and the air buzzes with energy. A sailor hauls a rope while humming an Irish tune. Another sharpens his cutlass, pausing to glance up at the clouds. You can sense their readiness, that instinctive twitch for action that separates pirates from ordinary sailors. Historians still argue whether most pirates truly believed in freedom or simply wanted to be their own tyrants. Perhaps it doesn't matter. What mattered was that for the first time you felt in control of your fate. The sea, indifferent and eternal, didn't care who you'd been yesterday, only what you could do today. The anchor chain rattles, and the ship slowly begins to turn with the tide. You lean against the rail and watch the harbour recede. The world you knew, the debts, the hunger, the rules all shrinking into distance. Ahead, only open water. The wind carries the scent of distant islands, and something sharper, metallic like danger itself. Someone claps you on the back. Too late to change your mind. He laughs. You smile weakly. He's right. For a long moment, you just stand there, watching the waves slide beneath the hull. The rhythmic splash feels almost hypnotic. Freedom has a sound, you think. It sounds like this. But you also feel the weight of what you've left behind, and the uneasy thrill of what's ahead. The sea stretches endlessly, a silver-blue promise and a threat. Somewhere out there lie fortunes and graves in equal measure. You tighten your grip on the rail as the sails fill, and the ship surges forward. The blackbird on the bowsprit takes flight, vanishing into the glare of the rising sun. You've chosen the black path now, and it's already too late to turn back. The ink on your name has barely dried when someone shoves a battered chest toward you. Inside are scraps of paper, a chipped compass, and a rolled-up document with frayed edges. You soon realize this isn't loot, it's the ship's code, the set of rules every man agrees to live and die by. You kneel beside the chest as the quartermaster unfolds the parchment. His hands are scarred, one finger missing at the knuckle. "These are the articles," he says in a low, gravelly voice. "Every ship has its own. Read before you swear, or you'll regret it before the next tide." The paper smells of rum and smoke, and the ink has run in several places from seawater. Still, you can make out the bold scrawl of the first lines. "Every man shall have an equal vote in affairs of moment. Every man shall have an equal share of provisions and strong liquors." You blink in surprise. Equal vote? Equal share? For a world that barely recognized most men's right to speak, this was radical. According to naval records of the time, merchant sailors had no such rights at all. Orders were barked and obeyed, and the captain's word was law. But here, on this floating republic, the crew ruled itself. The quartermaster points out another line. "If anyone steals from another, he shall be marooned." He grins faintly. "And no fighting aboard unless the captain allows it." Someone behind you chuckles and adds, "Except when the rum's gone." The laughter ripples through the crew, easy and familiar. There's something oddly civil about it all. You expected chaos, but what you find instead feels like a kind of democracy carved out of desperation. Some researchers today still disagree about how true these ideals were in practice. Were pirates really believers in equality? Or was it just convenience dressed up as principle? It's impossible to know for sure, but at this moment, standing beneath a sky the color of melted silver, it feels sincere. You trace your finger along the parchment as more rules come into view. Lights out at 8. No gambling for money. Musicians shall rest on the Sabbath, but only if the crew agrees. You almost laugh at that last part. The articles aren't written by scholars or kings. They're written by men who've learned what happens when you mix boredom, rum, and armed sailors in a small space. One curious detail tucked into these articles is the compensation chart. If you lose a leg, you get 800 pieces of 8. A right arm earns 600, a left arm 500. You find yourself doing the math before realizing how grim it is that such a price exists at all. The ship's surgeon nods toward it approvingly. "Fair's fair," he mutters. "Better than the Navy ever offered." When your turn comes, you place your hand over the parchment and repeat the oath. It isn't religious, it's practical. The crew wants to know you'll stand by them when cannon smoke fills the air. The words taste strange on your tongue, like salt and rust. "I'll hold true to ship and crew, in calm or storm, till the sea takes me or I take her." The quartermaster closes the chest with a loud thud. "You're one of us now." The others cheer half-heartedly, more from habit than excitement. You're just another body to man the sails, another set of hands to pull a trigger. But even so, you feel something loosen inside you, a knot you didn't know was there. Life aboard begins immediately. There's no ceremony, no adjustment period. You're handed a rope, pointed toward the rigging, and told to climb. The sun beats down mercilessly, and your fingers soon burn from the friction. Above you, the sails snap like thunder. You glance down and see the deck spread out below, men hauling, swearing, laughing. You feel dizzy but also alive in a way you never did on land. By nightfall your body aches, but the mood aboard is strangely buoyant. The cook serves hardtack softened in rum, and someone passes around a battered pipe filled with harsh tobacco. The smoke swirls around the lanterns, creating little halos in the air. You sit near the mast, exhausted, listening as a sailor tells a story about a cursed ship that sails with a skeleton crew. A few men laugh, others knock on wood. An old logbook from a captured vessel once described pirate discipline as harsh yet strangely fair. The captain was bound by the same rules as his crew. If he overstepped, the men could vote him out. Imagine that on a ship in 1718, a captain who answered to his crew. The concept feels years ahead of its time. Someone nudges you with a grin. "Careful what you wish for," he says. "Freedom's heavy once you carry it." You smile weakly and nod. unsure if it's wisdom or warning. As night deepens, the sea becomes a mirror for the stars. The ship rocks gently, and the ropes creak like sleepy whispers. The articles are tucked safely away again, but you can still feel their presence, the invisible net binding every man aboard. You think about the cost of that freedom, the risks, the punishment for betrayal, the promise of gold that might never come. You lie back against a coil of rope, staring up at the vast sky. The stars shimmer like lanterns guiding you into an uncertain dream. Somewhere below, the ocean hums softly, patient and endless. You close your eyes. For a moment, you forget the gallows, the hunger, the storms waiting beyond the horizon. You've signed away your past. The ink is dry, and the code is sealed. From this point on, you live and die by the articles and the will of the sea. The morning after you've signed the articles, the ship feels alive in a new way. The air hums with anticipation. The ropes sing softly under strain, and the sea glitters with that deceptive calm that sailors never trust. You wake to the shouts of men hoisting sails, their muscles slick with sweat and salt. The smell of tar and old wood fills your lungs as you stumble toward the rail. Today, you'll sail as a pirate for the first time. The captain's voice cuts through the noise. "Loose the topsails! Heave the anchor!" Every order is echoed down the line, answered by grunts and laughter. The rhythm of the work takes hold. You pull, you sweat, you breathe in time with the others. And when the ship finally starts to move, it's like a living thing beneath you, groaning and sighing as she leans into the wind. For a moment you forget fear. The world seems endless. The harbour fades behind you, shrinking into a smear of colour. Ahead lies open water, the wide blue stage of your new life. It's the first true taste of freedom you've ever known. Contemporary records from Royal Navy journals confirm how rare this feeling was for common sailors. On a naval vessel, discipline ruled every heartbeat. Rations were measured by ounce, time by the bell, and the captain's word was law. On a pirate ship, things were different. The same orders might be shouted, but there's a current of choice running through it all. You can feel it in the men's laughter, in their swagger, in the way they move like a pack of wolves rather than trained hounds. One peculiar habit catches your eye. Each time the ship tilts into a gust, a man near the bow spits over the side, murmuring something about keeping the spirits calm. Another sailor touches a small charm around his neck, a coin with a hole drilled through it. "For luck," he tells you, winking. It's a curious little superstition, one that would outlast the age of piracy itself. Sailors believed coins carried protection from drowning, though how a piece of silver could calm the sea is anyone's guess. The captain strides along the deck, watching his crew. He's not a tyrant, not yet. He moves with easy authority, his eyes scanning every rope and sail. When he passes you, he pauses, studying your hands. "You've worked a line before," he says. You nod, half lying, half remembering the days you spent on a merchant brig. He smirks. "Then you'll do." The day stretches long, the sun relentless. You work until your arms ache, the salt drying white on your skin. But between the labour, there are moments of strange beauty. Flying fish flash silver in the sunlight. The sails fill with a soft boom, snapping and breathing like great lungs. The sound of waves slapping the hull becomes a kind of music. As dusk approaches, the horizon burns gold. The wind dies down, and the ship slows to a steady roll. The crew gathers near the mainmast for a brief rest. Someone strums a fiddle, another taps rhythm on a barrel. The quartermaster distributes the evening ration of grog, that unholy mixture of rum, water, and whatever else might be at hand. You take a cautious sip. It's rough, sharp, and burns pleasantly down your throat. An older sailor leans toward you and grins. "First sail's always the sweetest," he says. "After that, the sea owns you." You ask what he means, but he only chuckles. "You'll see soon enough." In the distance, another ship glides along the fading horizon, her sails pale in the twilight. The lookout shouts, and suddenly the deck is alive again. Men spring to their stations, eyes fixed on that distant silhouette. The captain raises a spyglass, studying it for a long moment. "Merchantman," he says quietly. "Too far for tonight, but we'll keep watch." It's the first real sign of what you've become. The thrill in the air is unmistakable. This is what they live for: the chase, the strike, the promise of plunder. You feel it too, a faint pulse of excitement mixed with dread. You're not ready for battle yet, but soon you will be. Some modern historians suggest that for many pirates, the idea of freedom was inseparable from danger. The sea itself became both their refuge and their enemy. Others argue that it was simply economics. If you're starving, and the world refuses to pay you fairly, taking what you need becomes a kind of logic. Both explanations fit easily as the ship cuts through the darkening water, the stars rising one by one above the sails. The night grows quiet except for the creak of timbers and the slap of waves. Lanterns swing gently, casting golden circles on the deck. You lie awake for a while, feeling the slow rhythm of the ship's motion beneath you. Each sound, each sigh of rope and splash of foam feels like a lullaby. The sea is teaching you its language. Every creak, every gust, every silence carries meaning. A shift in wind, a sudden stillness, a faint change in pitch. By the time you drift to sleep, you can almost hear it whispering to you, words shaped in salt and spray. "You belong to me now. Tomorrow, the wind will rise again, and your life as a pirate will truly begin." You wake to the low groan of wood and the rhythm of boots above your head. The air below deck is thick with heat and damp, heavy enough to taste. Your hammock sways gently in the darkness, creaking with each roll of the ship. The smell hits you first: salt, sweat, smoke, and something sour. It's not unpleasant exactly, just human in a way that reminds you this floating world is alive, crowded, and lawless. You swing out of the hammock, bare feet landing on sticky planks. The light from a small lantern flickers, catching on rusted nails and dangling ropes. Around you, men sleep in every available space, curled against barrels, sprawled on the floor, even slumped against the hull. The snoring is a chorus, broken occasionally by a cough that sounds like gravel. You duck your head as someone rolls over and mutters in Spanish. Below deck is another world entirely, one hidden from the proud sails and clean horizon above. Here, life is lived close to the bone. Hammocks hang so tightly together you could reach out and touch three men without moving your feet. The air smells of mildew and brine. Rats scurry between barrels of hardtack, bold enough to stare before darting away. According to surviving ship logs from the early 1700s, conditions aboard pirate vessels were rough but often cleaner than naval ships. A strange fact, but it makes sense when you remember that disease was the real enemy. Captains who let their men rot below decks didn't stay alive long. The crew would revolt faster than a cannon could fire. You make your way to a small ladder, ducking under low beams. A sailor passes you a tin cup of water, lukewarm and faintly metallic. "Morning luxury," he says with a grin. You take a sip and nearly gag, but you thank him anyway. The camaraderie down here feels different, less like friendship, more like shared survival. In a corner, a man is patching a torn shirt with coarse thread. He hums softly, something that sounds like a lullaby. Another sits nearby sharpening a knife on a whetstone, his movements slow and methodical. The sound fills the room, rhythmic and oddly soothing. A parrot perched on a beam above squawks, "Pay your share!" and the room bursts into laughter. Someone must have trained it to mimic the quartermaster. A curious practice you soon notice involves the use of candles. Each hammock has a small metal cup nailed near its post, filled with a stub of tallow candle. They burn just long enough for a man to fall asleep, then gutter out, filling the air with a smoky sweetness. Some sailors carve little designs into the wax crosses, initials, crude hearts as if leaving a piece of themselves behind each night. The ship rolls hard, and a barrel topples over, spilling biscuits across the floor. They look fine until you pick one up and see tiny black specks moving inside. Weevils? A voice behind you says casually. Adds a bit of protein. You make a face, but hunger wins. You take a bite and crunch down, trying not to think too much about it. One detail often forgotten by romantic tales of piracy is how much of life happened below deck. Eating, sleeping, mending, arguing, it all happened in this dim, airless space. When storms came, this was where the crew huddled together, praying or cursing as water seeped through the cracks. Sometimes they sang to drown out the fear. A thick voice breaks the quiet. All hands topside. It's the bosun, his tone carrying authority and amusement. You climb up the ladder into daylight, blinking as the sun hits your face. The sudden brightness feels like rebirth. On deck, the crew moves with purpose. Some haul ropes, others scrub the planks with seawater and sand. A few men sit by the gun ports, cleaning pistols with careful hands. The smell of gun oil mixes with that of salt and tar. The quartermaster strides among them, calling out names and tasks. Keep her trim. No slack lines. We may have company soon. You find yourself assigned to the bilge crew for the morning, a job that sounds as grim as it is. Down below, you use buckets to scoop out water that leaks into the lowest part of the ship. It's dark, cold, and foul-smelling. The water sloshes thick and greasy, filled with fragments of wood and the occasional fish that found its way inside. You keep at it until your arms ache, emerging hours later soaked to the knees but oddly satisfied. When the bell rings for midday rations, everyone crowds around the galley. The cook, a wide man with a missing ear, ladles out a grey stew from a pot that's seen too many battles. It smells of onions, meat, and mystery. Eat quick, he says, before it walks off your plate. You laugh with the others, grateful for warmth in your stomach. After eating, you rest against the rail, feeling the ship breathe beneath you. The sea stretches forever, a rolling shimmer of light and shadow. Seabirds cry overhead, and for a brief moment, everything feels peaceful. Some modern researchers point out that pirate crews developed an odd kind of rhythm in their days, one part chaos and one part routine. Work, rest, song, watch each repeated until it became its own kind of order. It was the only way to stay sane in a life where any day could end in storm or gunfire. As evening falls, you head back below deck. The lanterns glow softly now, turning the shadows gold. The air is still heavy but familiar. Someone begins humming again, a slow tune that winds through the hammocks like smoke. The parrot mutters something unintelligible, then sighs as if it too is tired. You close your eyes, listening to the heartbeat of the ship, the creaks, the sighs, the quiet laughter. They blend into a single sound, the pulse of this strange floating home. You're no longer an outsider. You're part of the noise now, part of the rhythm that never stops. By the next dawn, the rhythm of pirate life has already begun to seep into your bones. You wake to a sky the color of faded copper and the slow sway of the ship beneath you. The cook's bell clangs twice, signaling the morning ration. You drag yourself up, your stomach grumbling louder than the waves. Breakfast is hardtack again. You pick up one of the biscuits, tap it against the table, and listen to the dull, stone-like thud. If it doesn't break your teeth, it's not real food, someone jokes nearby. You laugh, though your jaw aches as you take the first bite. It tastes of salt and dust with the faint bitterness of age. Pirate diets were strange things, balanced somewhere between ingenuity and necessity. Fresh food was a rarity. Everything had to last weeks at sea. According to accounts from ship surgeons of the period, most crews carried barrels of salted meat, dried peas, and hard bread that could survive entire voyages. The problem was, so could the weevils. To make it bearable, pirates turned to the one ingredient that never spoiled rum, mixed with water to form grog It was both drink and medicine, at least in their eyes. One curious detail you notice is that some sailors sprinkle a pinch of nutmeg or cinnamon into their cup when they can find it, claiming it keeps the sea spirits away. You take a sip, and it burns down your throat like fire wrapped in sweetness. The cook, known simply as Grub, moves among the men like a ringmaster. His left eye is covered with a patch, and his apron looks like it has seen more battles than the ship's flag. He ladles out the morning stew, grumbling, "Complain all you want, but this'll keep you upright when the storm hits." You glance inside the pot. Whatever's floating in there might once have been fish, or might still be. Between meals, life settles into a strange pattern. You haul ropes, scrub decks, and patch sails. When the sun climbs high, the heat becomes unbearable, and the smell of sweat mingles with that of rotting food and tar. Some men strip to the waist, their backs tattooed with anchors, skulls, or half-finished poems. Tattoos were a mark of pride among sailors, a permanent journal of where they'd been and what they'd survived. By midday, the ship grows quiet. Some men nap in the shade of the sails. Others play dice on overturned crates, the clatter blending with the slap of waves. You notice one man holding a lemon wedge like a treasure. He bites it slowly, eyes closed, savoring each drop. You ask him where he got it. "Prize from a merchant brig," he says. "Worth more than gold out here." He's not exaggerating. Scurvy, the slow, cruel disease born of vitamin starvation, was the true terror of the sea. Teeth fell out, skin split, and wounds refused to heal. It could wipe out half a crew long before the enemy's cannon did. But pirates, unlike many naval captains, often listened to experience rather than rank. Some kept barrels of pickled cabbage or citrus when they could. The trick wasn't widely understood, but it worked. The day drifts by in slow rhythm. Work, grog, laughter, curses. You start to see how these men survive. The sea demands constant attention, but it also gives moments of peace. In the evening, the horizon blazes with light, and the air turns cool and soft. The crew gathers again for the night ration, and someone begins to sing. It's a low tune, rhythmic and haunting, a song about a lost ship and a captain who bargained with the moon. The words blend with the creak of ropes and the crash of waves, wrapping the deck in something that feels ancient. You close your eyes and listen. One peculiar tradition among seafarers was the ritual of sharing the last sip of grog before sleep. It wasn't about generosity, it was superstition. Whoever finished the last drop was said to wake with luck. The man beside you raises his cup toward the stars. "To fair winds and fat prizes," he says. You echo the toast, and the others follow. The sound of clinking cups carries across the dark water like a promise. Some modern historians argue that pirate life, harsh as it was, offered more dignity than service under a navy. Food, pay, and even leisure were more evenly shared. It wasn't equality as philosophers imagined it, but it was something real enough to keep men loyal longer than gold ever could. You sit for a while after the others drift away, watching the phosphorescent glow in the wake. Tiny lights flicker where the oars cut through the sea, like stars scattered underwater. You imagine the spirits the sailors talk about, gliding just below the surface. Maybe they're listening too, drawn by the songs and the taste of rum. When you finally crawl into your hammock, the smell of salt and stew clings to your skin. The ship rocks gently, and somewhere a man snores like distant thunder. You smile, eyes heavy, thinking how strange it is that a life so rough can still feel so alive. The sea hums quietly against the hull, the oldest lullaby in the world. Morning light filters through the rigging like ribbons of gold, and you wake to the sound of hammering. On the deck, men are gathered around a small table, covered in metal tools, ropes, and an assortment of strange objects that glint in the sun. Today, you'll learn about the tools that make a pirate both terrifying and oddly ingenious. The quartermaster motions you over. Time to earn your keep, he says, handing you a flintlock pistol. It's heavier than you expect, its barrel scarred and dented. The wood smells of oil and salt. You run your thumb over the carved initials near the trigger, someone's mark, maybe the last man who used it. Firearms of the early 18th century were unreliable, but in the hands of a pirate, they became symbols as much as weapons. The flintlock, the cutlass, the boarding axe, these were the tools that built legends. Naval reports from the era describe pirates firing pistols once, then tossing them aside to draw blades. Reloading during combat was nearly impossible. A typical pirate might carry 2 or 3 pistols strapped across his chest, ready to fire in quick succession. The quartermaster shows you how to prime the pistol, how to pack the powder, how to blow gently to settle it. The metallic tang of the powder fills your nose. Treat her kindly, he warns. She bites if you rush her. You nod, trying not to cough as the smoke curls into the wind. Nearby, a group of men sharpen their cutlasses on a whetstone. The screech of metal against stone sets your teeth on edge. Each blade is different, some curved like claws, others straight and heavy. Take a look at this beauty, one sailor says, showing you a blade etched with strange symbols. Spanish steel. Won it off a man who tried to cheat at cards. He grins, showing teeth stained dark by tobacco. One curious fact you soon learn is that pirate ships carried surprisingly few cannons compared to naval vessels. Heavy guns slowed a ship and made her harder to maneuver. Speed and surprise mattered more than brute force. Instead, pirates favored smaller swivel guns and grenados, small clay bombs filled with powder and scrap metal. The crew called them iron kisses. As you help carry ammunition to the magazine, the smell of gunpowder grows sharp enough to sting. Barrels are stacked neatly, covered in tarred cloth to keep them dry. The master gunner, a wiry man with one eye clouded white, supervises every move. "Careless hands make widows," he says quietly as you pass him a barrel. The ship seems to hold its breath while he works. After the loading drills, you're sent to help with the cargo inventory. The hold is full of stolen goods, bolts of silk, barrels of sugar, crates of spices, and chests of indigo. It's a strange assortment, more trade than treasure. You run your fingers through a pile of nutmeg and breathe in the sweet, warm scent. "Worth a king's ransom in London," a sailor murmurs. He's right. The world runs on trade, and pirates are its shadow merchants. One entry from a captured merchant log notes how pirates sold stolen goods openly in ports that pretended not to notice. They bartered sugar for powder, spices for rum, gold for repairs. It was an invisible economy that thrived on silence and greed. You sit for a while on a crate of tea, wiping sweat from your brow. A faint song drifts from above deck, the kind men sing when their hands are busy but their minds wander. It's rhythmic, almost hypnotic, a call and response that keeps time with the swing of hammers and the thud of crates. In the afternoon, the captain orders target practice. The crew gathers near the rail, each man taking turns firing into the sea. The air fills with smoke and thunder, the recoil jolting your arm with each shot. When your turn comes, you aim carefully, exhale, and pull the trigger. The explosion echoes across the waves, and the smell of burnt powder lingers in your nose. The crew cheers as your shot splashes close to a floating barrel. "Not bad for a green hand," someone calls. Later, you help clean the pistols, wiping the barrels with oiled cloth. The routine feels almost sacred. Every scratch tells a story, every mark a memory. One sailor shows you a pistol grip carved from whalebone, its surface smooth as ivory. "Gift from a lady in Havana," he says with a wink. "Or maybe from her husband. Hard to remember." Some maritime historians believe pirates had a strange relationship with their weapons, part tool, part identity. A man's blade might be buried with him if the crew had time. Others tossed them into the sea in silent tribute when one of their own died. You can almost feel that reverence in the way these men handle their arms, careful, proud, and a little superstitious. As the sun dips toward the horizon, the deck quiets. Tools are stowed, pistols polished, and the smell of smoke fades into the night air. You lean on the rail, hands still blackened from powder. The sea glows in soft orange light, calm and endless. You realize something as you watch the waves. Piracy isn't just violence or greed. It's a craft, a way of life built from scraps and salt. Each tool, each blade, each trick learned over years of storms and battles keeps this fragile freedom alive. You glance down at the pistol on your belt and feel its weight, not just metal, but meaning. When darkness finally falls, you breathe deeply and taste the night air, smoky and sweet. Somewhere behind you, someone hums that same work song again, low and tired but steady. It sounds almost like the sea itself, patient and eternal. The next morning begins with a sound that makes your stomach tighten, the booming crack of cannon fire. At first it seems distant, like thunder rolling across the sea. Then it comes again, closer this time, sharper, followed by a shout from the lookout high in the rigging. "Sail ahead! 2 points to port!" You rush to the deck, heart pounding. The crew is already alive with movement, pulling ropes, checking pistols, readying the cannons. The smell of powder hangs faintly in the air, even before the guns are loaded. You glance toward the horizon and see it another ship, her sails white and fat with wind, cutting steadily toward you. The captain raises his spyglass. For a long moment he says nothing. Then he lowers it with a smile that's half thrill, half calculation. "Merchantman," he says. "Dutch by the looks of her. Probably sugar or rum. She's fat and slow. Ready the chase guns." Every muscle on deck seems to tighten. You feel the excitement spreading like heat, though you can sense the fear underneath it too. Battle means prizes, but it also means death. The quartermaster calls out the plan. The crew moves with practiced speed. Powder boys scurry like shadows, carrying cartridges wrapped in waxed paper. Gunners check the touch holes and tamp the cannons tight. Someone hands you a bucket of water and a sponge. "Keep the guns wet between shots," he says. Powder burns fast. You take your position beside one of the smaller cannon ports, the deck trembling with each adjustment of the guns. The target ship grows larger with every breath. You can see her now, a tall merchantman with a painted stern and fluttering flag. When the first cannon fires, the world explodes into smoke and sound. The blast shakes your chest, filling your mouth with the taste of salt and fire. Smoke rolls across the deck, choking the air, stinging your eyes. The gun crew works quickly, loading, swabbing, and firing again. The rhythm becomes mechanical, terrifyingly beautiful in its precision. Fragments of wood burst from the enemy hull as the shots find their mark. You hear faint shouts across the water, the crack of splintering masts. The other ship tries to turn, but your captain is already shouting orders to cut her off. "Trim the sails! Hold her steady!" You steal a glance between volleys. The other ship's deck is chaos men running, sails flapping wildly. For a moment you feel pity, then adrenaline drowns it out. This is what you signed up for. One unusual tactic you notice is how the captain avoids targeting the enemy's hull too heavily. "Aim for the rigging," he says. "Cripple her, don't sink her. Dead ships don't pay." It's an insight you hadn't considered before. Pirates rarely wanted to destroy, they wanted to claim. As your ship closes the distance, muskets crack from the upper deck. Lead balls hiss through the smoke. You see a man fall from the enemy's rigging, arms flailing before he vanishes into the sea. The sound of battle becomes a kind of storm, layered and endless. Cannon, musket, shouting, wind. Then comes the order everyone waits for. "Boarding party ready." The cry ripples through the crew like electricity. Grappling hooks are thrown, ropes catch, and the two ships grind together in a shuddering embrace. The smell of burnt powder gives way to sweat and blood. You climb over the rail behind the others, cutlass drawn. The deck on the other side is chaos. Men clash in tight spaces, shouting, slipping on wet planks. You duck as a pistol flashes beside your head, the sound deafening. The man who fired doesn't have time to reload before another sailor knocks him down. The fight is brutal but short. The merchant crew surrenders within minutes, raising their hands and tossing weapons aside. You stand panting, every muscle trembling. Around you, pirates shout in triumph, laughing through the smoke. Someone waves a captured flag above his head. The captain steps across the blood-slicked deck, calm and smiling. "Well done, lads," he says. "Now let's see what our friends were carrying." The plunder is exactly what he hoped for. Barrels of rum, sugar, and cloth. No gold, but wealth enough to keep the crew happy. The quartermaster begins the tally, marking each item with chalk. Fair division will come later, but for now, the men celebrate. An odd ritual follows. A few sailors toss coins into the sea as an offering to the drowned. To the ones who fed the fishes, one says quietly. No one mocks him. Even in this world of violence, respect for the dead runs deep. According to surviving letters from captured pirates, such moments of silence were common after battle. It wasn't remorse exactly, but recognition the sea takes what it wants. Some scholars suggest that these gestures helped crews hold onto their humanity amid bloodshed. You can feel it too, that strange balance between savagery and sorrow. As the ships drift apart, you stand at the rail, watching the wounded merchant vessel limp toward the horizon. Your ship rocks gently now, the tension gone, replaced by exhaustion. The deck smells of smoke, sweat, and spilled rum. When the sun sets, the sea glows red, and the crew begins to sing. The tune is rough but steady, a chorus of tired voices carried by the wind. You hum along without knowing the words. For the first time, you've seen battle and survived. You should feel fear or guilt, but instead you feel something quieter, deeper. The rhythm of the sea has taken root in you. The waves rise and fall, indifferent and eternal. Above them, your ship sails on, alive, scarred, and free. By morning, the smell of smoke has faded, replaced by the sweet scent of spilled sugar and the heavy aroma of rum. The crew moves slower today, bruised and weary but grinning like men who have cheated death. The captured goods lie in neat piles across the deck, each barrel marked with chalk symbols. The quartermaster stands beside them, ledger in hand, calling out numbers while the men gather to listen. This is the ritual of division, the moment when every pirate measures his share of fortune and risk. You stand among them, the salty wind cooling your skin, watching how business replaces battle. The captain may command in combat, but here, the quartermaster rules. He reads each entry aloud, his voice deliberate and steady. 12 barrels of sugar, 8 of rum, 5 bolts of silk, and 1 chest of coin. The crew cheers at the last part. Coins jingle faintly as the chest is opened, glimmering in the sunlight. It isn't a mountain of treasure, but it's enough to make eyes widen and hearts quicken. The quartermaster grins. Fair shares as always. Captain and carpenter take 1.5 each, gunners get 1.25, and the rest, 1 full share. According to preserved pirate codes from the early 18th century, this system of equal distribution was surprisingly democratic. The hierarchy was practical rather than noble. Each man's share reflected his risk and skill, not birth or title. In a world where sailors ashore barely earned a few shillings a month, this was freedom of another kind. The crew forms a loose line, each man stepping forward to claim his share. The clinking of silver fills the air like music. Some bite the coins, testing their authenticity. Others immediately gamble, tossing dice onto the planks. Laughter rises with each throw. A few men tuck their coins into belts or tie them into small leather pouches worn under their shirts. Trust was a luxury no one could afford. One sailor, thin and wiry, offers to buy another man's silk bolt for a pistol. Cloth's no use in a storm, he says, but a loaded pistol saves your hide. The trade is made with a handshake and a grin. This floating world runs on its own kind of economy, half barter, half bravado. You notice the captain standing apart, sipping from a pewter cup. His eyes scan the deck, not with greed, but calculation. A captain who takes too much risks mutiny. One who takes too little risks losing respect. The balance is delicate, and every man knows it. An odd little custom follows the payout. The cook rolls a pair of bones carved from whale ivory, and whoever throws the lowest number must scrub the deck for a week. The loser groans as laughter erupts around him. The act isn't cruel, just a release after tension, a reminder that life, for now, is good. As the afternoon wears on, the rum barrels are opened for celebration. Cups are passed, songs begin, and for a few hours the ship becomes something like a tavern. The sea stretches calm and blue around you, glittering like polished glass. Someone strums a fiddle while another beats rhythm on an empty barrel. The sound is uneven but joyous. In a quieter corner, two older sailors sit with their coins laid out before them, arranging them in patterns. "Never count your luck all at once," one says softly. It invites the sea's jealousy. You remember the offering of coins tossed into the water after battle and realize how superstition wraps itself around everything here. For men who live without certainty, even small rituals feel sacred. Later, the quartermaster gathers what remains of the cargo to trade at the next port. The crew helps restow barrels, lashing them tight. You can feel the satisfaction in their movements. Every rope pulled, every lid secured means more days of food, more powder, more life. Documents left by captured privateers suggest that such order surprised the officials who interrogated pirates. They expected chaos, but found instead a kind of rough pragmatism. These men might be outlaws, but they were professionals in their own brutal trade. As the sun begins to sink, the celebration quiets. Some men sleep where they sit, others lean against barrels and stare at the glowing horizon. The sea turns copper and violet, soft waves licking against the hull. You sit with your cup of rum, the coins in your pocket clinking softly with each movement. The weight feels strange, part triumph, part burden. The captain joins you for a moment, his shadow stretching long across the deck. "You did well yesterday," he says simply. His voice is calm, almost kind. "Don't let the silver fool you, though. It shines brighter than it lasts." You nod, unsure how to answer. When he walks away, you glance down at the reflection of the fading sun in your drink. It ripples, fractured by every movement of the ship. You think about how easily fortune shifts, how quickly the sea can take back what it gives. As the first stars appear, you lie back against a coil of rope, listening to the murmured talk of men counting their spoils. Laughter fades into snores, and the night wind cools your face. Somewhere below, water sloshes gently in the hold, steady and indifferent. You close your eyes, the taste of rum still warm on your tongue. Today was victory. Tomorrow will be something else. On a pirate ship, the tide of fortune never stays still for long. When dawn breaks again, the ship smells of salt, wood smoke, and drying rum. The crew stirs slowly, nursing sore heads and quiet hangovers. Today the sea is calm, a flat sheet of silver under a sky streaked with pale pink. Somewhere far off, gulls cry, and the sound feels almost like laughter. You lean on the rail, watching the horizon. The last few days have been filled with motion and noise, but now there's something different in the air. Expectation. The captain stands near the helm, scanning the waves with his spyglass. "We'll make Nassau by nightfall," he says to no one in particular, and just like that, the mood changes. Nassau. The name moves through the crew like a spark through dry rope. Even the laziest sailors suddenly find energy. Nassau isn't just a port, it's the closest thing pirates have to home. By midday, the wind picks up, filling the sails with a soft, booming rhythm. The ship moves faster, cutting through waves that glitter like glass. You can smell land before you see it, the faint sweetness of mangroves and smoke carried by the breeze. Then, on the horizon, the island appears, rising green and gold out of the blue. As you draw closer, the scene unfolds like a fever dream. Ships of every shape and size crowd the harbour, some flying tattered flags, others none at all. Their hulls are patched and scarred, their decks loud with music and laughter. From shore comes the thump of drums, the smell of roasting meat, the chatter of 100 tongues. Nassau is chaos, and it is glorious. Accounts from British officials of the early 1700s describe Nassau as a den of rogues and thieves, but that doesn't capture its spirit. Here, freedom hums in the air like static. The island has no law but the seas. If you can pay, trade, or fight, you belong. As your ship anchors, small boats paddle out to meet you. Locals wave, calling out offers in a jumble of languages: English, French, Creole, even bits of West African dialects. They sell coconuts, fruit, and tobacco, tossing them up for coins. You buy a mango, its flesh warm and sweet, and for a moment you forget every hardship of the past weeks. The crew prepares to go ashore. The quartermaster warns everyone to keep watch for thieves, but the grins on their faces say they're already halfway drunk on the thought of solid ground. You join them in the longboat, the oars dipping into turquoise water that glows like melted glass. The beach feels strange under your feet, soft and hot. You walk past palm trees and rough wooden shacks painted in bright, uneven colors. A pig trots across the path, snorting. Music drifts from an open tavern, the notes of a fiddle rising above laughter. Inside, the tavern smells of sweat, smoke, and spice. Tables overflow with sailors, privateers, smugglers, and women who move through the crowd with practiced ease. Rum spills across the floor, and the sound of dice and song fills the air. Someone shouts a greeting to your captain, and within minutes, drinks are being poured, stories traded, and bets placed. One odd detail catches your eye: a corner table where two men and a woman are drawing up what looks like a contract. You realize with surprise that they're negotiating over the sale of a captured ship. In Nassau, even crime has its paperwork. It's an open secret that many merchants here buy stolen goods without question. Everyone profits, and no one asks too many questions. A sailor you recognize from the gun crew nudges you. "Careful with your coin," he warns. "This place'll charm the last shilling out of your pocket." He's right. The tavern is full of temptations: cards, drink, music, companionship. But it's also full of danger. Fights can erupt over a glance, and knives are faster than apologies. In a quieter corner, you meet a man who claims to have sailed with Blackbeard himself. His beard is braided with ribbons, and his eyes gleam with mischief. "The trick," he says, leaning close, "is not the smoke or the guns. It's fear. Make them think you're a monster, and half your work's done before you fire a shot." He laughs, but you see something in his expression, a flicker of truth. Evening comes quickly. Lanterns flicker to life, painting the beach in warm light. The sound of music drifts over the water, mingling with the crackle of bonfires. You wander along the shore, watching shadows dance on the waves. The stars above are sharp and clear, their reflections trembling on the surface. One curious scene catches your attention: a group of sailors standing around a freshly dug pit, each tossing in a coin before filling it with sand. "For luck," someone explains, "so the sea doesn't take it back from us." You smile at the ritual. Even surrounded by freedom, they still fear the ocean's hunger. Later, you sit by the water with your cup of rum, watching the harbour lights shimmer. Somewhere behind you, laughter erupts again, followed by a cheer. A fiddle starts up another tune. Nassau never sleeps. In that moment, you realize this place is more than refuge. It's a dream, fragile and wild. For now, the sea has given you peace. Tomorrow, it may demand payment again. But tonight, with sand beneath your hands and the scent of rum in the air, You almost believe that this life might last forever. By the time the sun rises over Nassau again, the island is already stirring. Smoke curls from cooking fires, gulls shriek above the harbour, and the air carries a sticky sweetness of palm sap and rum. You walk along the beach barefoot, the sand cool in the morning shade. Around you, the wreckage of the previous night's revelry lies scattered. Overturned cups, broken shells, a single boot half buried in the tide line. Today feels different. The celebration has quieted, replaced by murmured talk of legends, rumours, and names spoken with admiration or fear. Among them are two that seem to hang in the air like a challenge: Anne Bonny and Mary Read. You first hear their names at a small tavern built from driftwood and ship planks. Inside, a woman in a faded red scarf is telling their story to a crowd of half-sober sailors. Her voice rises and falls with the rhythm of the sea. Two women dressed as men, sailing and fighting alongside Calico Jack. They were fiercer than half the crew and twice as smart. The men listening nod. Some scoff, but no one interrupts. You lean closer, drawn by the mixture of disbelief and wonder in their eyes. Pirates, after all, are not easily impressed. Contemporary court records from 1720 confirm the existence of both Anne Bonny and Mary Read, though the details blur between history and myth. What's certain is that they sailed on the sloop Revenge under Jack Rackham's command, fought with pistols and cutlasses, and refused to hide behind the men. Some even say that when their ship was finally captured, they were the last to stop fighting. The storyteller finishes her tale, slamming a cup down for emphasis. The men begged for mercy, she says, but Anne and Mary stood tall and cursed their captors, told them to fight like men if they wanted to live like them. The crowd laughs and cheers, slapping the tables. You smile too, though part of you wonders what truth hides beneath the legend. Outside, the sun climbs higher, and the harbour bustles again. Sailors haul barrels of stolen sugar. Traders haggle in a dozen languages. A group of women wade into the shallows, washing clothes and singing softly. One of them wears a knife strapped to her thigh, a silent reminder that here, everyone learns to defend what's theirs. Historians who study piracy still debate how common women at sea truly were. Some claim Anne and Mary were exceptions. Others believe there were more who disguised themselves to escape the cages of their old lives. Whatever the truth, the sea seems to erase boundaries that land enforces. Out here, strength and loyalty matter more than gender or birth. You wander farther inland, past palm trees and crooked huts, until you reach the edge of a clearing where several small ships are being repaired. The air smells of tar and sawdust. A woman in a loose white shirt shouts orders to a group of men patching a hull. Her voice is steady and commanding. She notices you watching and grins. "Don't just stand there," she says. "If you've got two hands, grab a hammer." You hesitate, then laugh and join in. The work feels good, steady, rhythmic, alive. Later, when you rest, she sits beside you, wiping sweat from her brow. Her name is Grace, though the crew calls her Red for the colour of her scarf. "Used to cook for a merchant ship," she tells you. "Captain thought I was harmless. He was wrong." She laughs, tossing you a piece of dried mango. "Sees a better master than any man I've met." There's something about her voice that feels familiar, as if she carries echoes of every woman who ever defied expectation. In her eyes, you see the same fire that must have burned in Anne Bonny's or Mary Read's, the determination to live on their own terms, even if it meant dying for it. As evening falls, the harbour glows with lantern light. You find yourself at another tavern where the captain sits with a small group of locals, trading stories for information. You join them just in time to hear talk of a French treasure ship sighted near Hispaniola. The captain leans back, eyes gleaming. "A fat prize if we can reach her before the Navy does." The men nod, but there's hesitation too. The sea has a way of punishing greed. The conversation drifts to the stories of Anne and Mary again. Someone mentions that they were both captured while pregnant, spared from the gallows only because of it. Another sailor shakes his head. Some say they escaped, others say they died in prison. The truth is uncertain, but their legend refuses to fade. You sit quietly, tracing the rim of your cup with your finger, thinking of them, their courage, their anger, their laughter. In a world ruled by men, they carved their own names into the wood of history. It's said that Anne Bonny's last words to Jack Rackham before his execution were, "If you'd fought like a man, you wouldn't be hanging like a dog," a line too sharp to forget. Outside, waves whisper against the shore. A night breeze carries the scent of salt and wildflowers. You step out into the cool air, letting the noise of the tavern fade behind you. The stars stretch wide and bright above Nassau, and for a moment, you think about how the sea makes rebels of everyone who listens too closely to its call. You close your eyes, imagining the sails of revenge billowing in the wind. The laughter of two defiant women cutting through the roar of battle. The world may forget their faces, but the sea remembers. When the next dawn creeps across the harbour, you wake to the sound of gulls fighting over scraps and the low murmur of waves against the hull. Nassau fades behind you in the distance, a shimmer of colour on the horizon. The air feels heavy, the sea calm, and the ship glides forward on a slow, steady wind. After days of noise and drink, the quiet feels strange, almost intimate. The men move sluggishly, nursing heads and half-buried regrets. The captain, sober and sharp, stands near the helm. "We're bound east," he says quietly. "No rest until we've doubled the quay." His eyes meet yours, and for a moment you see something unguarded, a flicker of loneliness that even the sea can't hide. That loneliness spreads like a mist through the crew. Pirates lie packed together, but each man carries his solitude like a secret. You see it in the way they sit alone at the rail, staring into nothing, in the way they polish their pistols too long or hum songs that trail into silence. You start to sense what life out here truly means. Long stretches of stillness broken by bursts of violence and laughter, and the deep ache of knowing no shore belongs to you anymore. In the afternoon you climb to the quarterdeck and find two sailors sitting shoulder to shoulder, passing a single pipe between them. One of them, a tall man with a scar that splits his eyebrow, gestures for you to sit. "We keep each other sane out here," he says, "or try to." He taps the pipe against the railing, then adds, "You'll see strange friendships form at sea. Strange loves too." His tone isn't mocking, just tired. You look at the men around you and notice how close they move together, how easily they touch each other's shoulders in passing. There's tenderness here, rough and unspoken. According to letters written by captured sailors, the bond between shipmates often blurred the line between friendship and something deeper. Some historians argue it was practical comfort in isolation. Others believe it was the only kind of intimacy possible in a world that had left morality behind. Whatever the truth, affection among pirates was common and rarely judged. Out here, survival was all that mattered. That evening, as the sky turns to violet and the sea glows faintly beneath the stars, a small gathering forms on the main deck. Someone strums a quiet tune on a battered fiddle. Another man hums along softly. The music is gentle, almost tender, and it fills the spaces between you. The song has no words, only the rise and fall of longing. You watch as two sailors sway slightly together, eyes closed, lost in rhythm. Nobody laughs, nobody jeers. For a moment, it feels as though the whole ship is breathing in unison, the same fragile heartbeat echoing in the creak of the ropes. Later, the ship's carpenter sits beside you, polishing a wooden charm. "For my girl," he says, though you can't tell if she's on land or buried under waves. He shows you the small carving, a heart pierced by a dagger, the initials almost worn away by handling. "It helps to remember something soft," he murmurs. You nod, understanding more than you expect. The sea doesn't leave room for sentiment, yet every man aboard carries a memory tucked somewhere deep. A wife, a child, a lover, a brother lost to a storm. Even the roughest crewman falls quiet when talk drifts to home. At night, the ship grows still again. The wind dies, and the ocean lies glassy beneath a sky thick with stars. You sit near the rail, the wood cool under your fingers, listening to the slow breathing of the sleeping crew. The loneliness of the sea presses close, vast and quiet. A whisper reaches you from somewhere nearby. You ever wonder if the world remembers us? It's the scarred man again, voice low and thoughtful. All the blood, all the gold, maybe it just sinks like everything else. You glance at him, unsure how to answer. Maybe the sea remembers, you say finally. He smiles faintly. Aye, she remembers everything. One curious ritual you notice before sleep is how a few sailors lay small trinkets on the deck near their hammocks. A coin, a carved shell, a scrap of ribbon. Offerings, perhaps, to hold their dreams steady. When you ask, one man shrugs. It keeps the nightmares away. As the ship drifts under the moonlight, you realize this life is not just about freedom or fear. It's about finding ways to stay human when the world turns to water around you. The bonds formed here are fragile but real, built not on promises but on shared breath and survival. You close your eyes, listening to the soft creak of the hull and the rhythmic splash of waves. The sea hums its endless song, and for a brief moment, you feel less alone. Morning light slants through the sails, pale and quiet, catching flecks of salt that drift like dust in the air. You stretch your arms and feel the ache of another night spent in the hammock, your body swaying in rhythm with the sea. The deck above hums with low conversation and the soft scrape of brushes as the men scrub away yesterday's grime. You climb topside to find the ship bathed in sunlight. The water is calm, a clear mirror stretching in all directions. Men move about their work with shirts undone and sleeves rolled, the smell of brine and sweat thick in the air. But something new catches your attention color, bits of it everywhere. Red scarves tied around arms, blue ribbons hanging from belts, tattoos peeking from sun-browned skin. You realize that each mark, each adornment, tells a story. Pirate crews were not uniform like naval ships. They were kaleidoscopes of identity. According to period sketches and sailors' diaries, clothing was scavenged, stolen, or gifted, a chaotic blend of silk, linen, and leather. Some wore fancy coats captured from officers. Others stuck to plain shirts and trousers. What mattered was comfort and swagger. The sea might take everything else, but style was still a choice. You watch as a sailor with a bright green sash tightens the knot at his waist. Spanish prize, he says proudly when he catches your eye. Taken off Havana last year. Feels like victory. Another man beside him polishes a silver buckle, muttering that it brings luck. Around the ship, color becomes armor proof that each man has lived, fought, and earned his place. The tattoos fascinate you most. Arms, chests, even ankles bear rough ink lines in deep blue and black. Skulls, anchors, mermaids, compasses. One sailor shows you a crude heart pierced by a dagger. For a girl I left behind, he says, then grins. Or maybe for the rum. Hard to tell now. Tattooing among sailors dates back centuries, spreading from Polynesia through trade and travel. The ink was mixed with gunpowder and soot, the needles improvised from sharpened wire or bone. The process was painful, but no one complained. Pain was part of the ritual. You notice a man sitting apart from the others, etching something into his forearm with slow precision. Curious, you step closer and see the faint outline of a compass rose taking shape. Helps me remember which way is home, he says without looking up. His tone is soft, almost reverent. Not all the decorations are human. The ship itself is alive with symbols. A small carved figure of a woman adorns the bow, her paint long faded by salt. Pieces of cloth flutter from the rigging, each one a memento of a past victory or a lost friend. The sails carry stains that no scrubbing can erase, marks of storms survived and battles won. One peculiar custom you learn about involves earrings. Some sailors wear small gold hoops, not for vanity, but as insurance. Worth enough to pay for a burial if I wash ashore, an old crewman tells you with a wink. You reach up and touch your own ear. Half, considering the idea. On this ship, even jewelry has meaning. As the day warms, the air fills with laughter. A young sailor challenges another to a game of knife tricks, balancing the blade on his fingertips before flipping it into the air. The metal flashes bright against the sun. You watch the contest, admiring the grace and danger in every move. Life at sea, you realize, is always part performance. The swagger, the bright clothes, the symbols they're as vital as food or gunpowder. Some modern researchers suggest that pirate identity was a kind of rebellion in itself, a way to reject the dull obedience of Navy life. Dressing boldly, marking their skin, and naming their ships after vengeance or freedom turned existence into defiance. These men weren't just stealing goods, they were stealing dignity back from a world that had denied it to them. By afternoon, the deck smells of pitch and sweat, but also something faintly sweet. A man from the cook's crew has roasted a handful of stolen coffee beans over a small fire, sharing the smell, if not the drink. You breathe it in deeply, imagining port cities where perfume and gunpowder mingle in the same alleyway. When the sun lowers, shadows stretch long across the deck. The men lounge with their shirts open, their tattoos glowing faintly in the fading light. Someone begins sewing torn fabric, humming softly. Another polishes the brass fittings on a pistol until it gleams like gold. These small acts of care feel almost sacred, tiny rebellions against decay. You stand by the rail, running a finger over the small rope bracelet tied to your wrist. One of the older sailors gave it to you on your first day aboard, telling you never to untie it. "It'll keep you part of the ship," he said. You'd laughed then, but now you're not so sure it was a joke. The wind shifts, carrying the scent of distant rain. The captain's voice rises briefly, giving quiet orders to secure the sails. Around you, the crew moves in practiced rhythm. The colors of their scarves flutter in the breeze, bright against the gathering dusk. As darkness settles, you think about what all those marks and tokens mean. To an outsider, they might look like vanity. But out here, where the sea swallows everything sooner or later, these details are anchors, proof that you existed, that you chose how to be seen before the ocean erases your name. You lean on the rail and look down at your reflection, faint and trembling in the water. The ship's lanterns ripple beside it, fragments of gold drifting in blackness. You touch the rope on your wrist again, feeling its roughness, its reminder. Out here, identity is as fragile as light on water, but for now, it still shines. The storm comes without warning. One moment, the air is still and heavy, the sky a clear grey blue. The next, the wind screams through the rigging, and the sea heaves like something alive. Rain falls in thick sheets, turning the deck slick beneath your feet. The crew scrambles to reef the sails, ropes whipping through the air like angry serpents. You grab hold of a line just as the ship tilts sharply, a wall of water crashing over the side and drenching everything in salt and chaos. The captain's voice cuts through the roar. "Hold fast!" he shouts, his coat plastered to his back. You can barely hear him over the wind, but you follow his gestures, hauling on the rope until your hands burn. Lightning splits the sky, blinding white, and for a moment, the world freezes. Then thunder rolls so close it feels as if the ocean itself is breaking apart. By the time the storm finally passes, the sea has turned calm again, glassy and pale. The ship drips from every beam, sails torn, ropes tangled. Men slump against barrels, panting, eyes hollow from exhaustion. A few laugh shakily, others simply sit in silence. You press your palms to the slick wood and feel it vibrating with leftover energy, as if the storm is still whispering inside it. That night, the crew gathers to tend the wounded. The ship's surgeon, a thin man with spectacles perpetually sliding down his nose, sets up a small table under a lantern. His tools gleam dull and worn. Saws, knives, a needle threaded with horsehair. The air smells of rum and sweat. "Hold him steady," he says to you, and you grip the shoulders of a sailor whose arm is split open from elbow to wrist. He bites down on a strip of leather while the surgeon works quickly, sewing torn flesh by the dim light. Accounts from captured pirates describe such moments with grim honesty. Medical care aboard ship was crude, painful, and improvisational. Rum doubled as disinfectant and anesthesia. Fire was used to cauterize wounds. Sometimes the carpenter helped, as his saws were sharper than the surgeon's. You watch in fascination and horror as the surgeon finishes his work, then ties off the thread with calm precision. When the operation is done, he wipes his hands on a rag and takes a long drink of rum. "That one will live," he mutters. "Maybe." You ask him how many don't. He glances at you, tired but amused. "More than I count, less than I should." Superstition creeps into the aftermath. One of the older sailors burns a twist of tobacco and waves it through the air, muttering a charm to ward off sickness. Another ties a sprig of rosemary to the wounded man's hammock. "Keeps the fever from finding him," he explains solemnly. You don't know whether to laugh or believe him. A peculiar habit spreads among the men for the next few days. They refuse to whistle on deck, claiming that the wind spirits might mistake it for mockery and stir another storm. Someone nails a piece of broken mast to the foremast, saying it will protect the ship from future tempests. Strange, how quickly fear shapes ritual. The next morning dawns soft and golden. You wake to the rhythmic creak of the ship and the smell of boiled herbs. The surgeon sits by a small pot, stirring a dark, bitter mixture. "For the fevers," he says when you pass by. "Pepper, lemon peel and bark. Tastes like death but does the job." He ladles a small cup into your hands. The liquid is warm and foul, but you drink it anyway. Somewhere nearby, a man hums a tune to himself while wrapping another's bandaged arm. The melody is simple and low, a lullaby in a language you don't recognize. It drifts through the air, mixing with the slow slap of water against the hull. In its rhythm, you can almost hear the heartbeat of the ship, steady again after chaos. A strange calm settles over everyone. Storms remind the crew how small they are, how fragile. Even the most hardened men move with quiet reverence for a few days afterward. The sea has taken her toll, and they're wise enough to respect it. Some modern researchers suggest that these rituals and beliefs weren't just superstition, but coping mechanisms. They gave men control in a world ruled by randomness. Whether or not they believed in spirits or omens didn't matter as much as the comfort those beliefs provided. You feel that truth now, in the small gestures of faith that follow the storm's violence. Later, the captain orders a makeshift ceremony for the two sailors lost overboard. The crew gathers at dusk, hats removed, eyes fixed on the horizon. The quartermaster reads a few solemn lines from a torn prayer book, and then two weighted sacks, each stitched from spare canvas, are lowered gently into the sea. The water closes over them without sound. No one speaks for a while. The wind sighs through the rigging, and the ocean rolls, indifferent as always. A single gull circles overhead, crying once before vanishing into the dark. The silence feels sacred. When night falls, the surgeon sits near you, cleaning his tools with slow, deliberate movements. "The sea takes her due," he says quietly. "We just decide how much she gets at a time." His words linger in the air long after he walks away. You lie awake in your hammock later, listening to the creaks and groans of the ship. The scent of herbs and smoke still clings to the air. Your hands sting from the salt, your muscles ache, but you're alive. You think about the charms, the songs, the whispered prayers, all tiny threads binding fear into something survivable. Outside, the waves murmur softly against the hull, a sound like breathing. The storm is gone, but its memory remains, stitched into every plank and heart aboard. The days after the storm slip into a soft, steady rhythm. The sea smooths out again, its surface shimmering under the sun like rippled glass. The air smells of salt and drying wood, and the crew moves with a quiet energy, repairing sails and tightening lines. The ship feels whole once more, alive and breathing. By nightfall, laughter returns to the deck. Someone begins to whistle, defying the superstition at last, and no storm answers. That night, after supper, the sound of music rises from the quarterdeck. A fiddler plays a fast tune, sharp and bright, his bow scraping across the strings with a joyful roughness. A drum joins in, made from an old cask stretched with hide. Feet stamp in rhythm, and voices follow, half singing, half shouting. You feel the vibration through the boards as the ship sways in time with the beat. It's not a performance for anyone but themselves. Pirates sing to forget the world that hunts them. The songs are raw, funny, sometimes sad, stitched from memory and rumor. One begins with a line about a girl in Kingston, another about a captain who lost his ship for love. The verses twist and change as each man adds his own words, and by the end, the song has become something entirely new. According to journals from captured sailors, pirates were famous for their music. Sea shanties kept rhythm during work, but off-duty, songs became a kind of storytelling. They carried gossip, history, and warning. The melodies changed with every voyage, but the heart of them stayed the same, the longing for freedom and the fear of being forgotten. The rum flows easily tonight. Cups clink, laughter bursts, and the air grows thick with smoke from the galley's fire. You sit near the rail, your cup in hand, watching the lantern light flicker on the waves. A sailor sits beside you, humming softly. His voice is low, weathered by salt and wind. The tune drifts like smoke, slow and haunting. "Old Calico Jack," he murmurs, "hung in the sun and left to rot, but his flag still flies in our dreams." He laughs quietly at his own words, then drinks. You glance across the deck and see another small group huddled around a barrel. A young man is telling a ghost story, his face lit from below by a lantern. "They say if you die at sea with your eyes open," he whispers, "your spirit keeps sailing until someone closes them for you." The others listen in rapt silence. When he finishes, they all tap the deck 3 times for luck. The sound echoes faintly, swallowed by the sea. These stories, you realize, are their way of keeping fear at bay. The same men who face cannons without blinking still flinch at whispers of cursed ships and ghostly lights. One sailor swears he once saw a phantom vessel glowing green on the horizon. Another insists he heard music under the waves. "The sea's got her own orchestra," he says with a grin. "We just join in when she lets us." Later, when the music slows, the cook brings out what's left of the rum and pours a final round. The captain raises his cup. "To the sea," he says simply, "our jailer and our mother." The crew answers with a ragged cheer. You drink, the burn of the rum spreading warmth through your chest. As the night deepens, the sound of the fiddle softens into something almost tender. The stars shimmer above like 1,000 tiny lanterns. You lie on your back, feeling the cool breeze brush your face, and listen to the ship breathe. Someone nearby murmurs a prayer in a language you don't understand. Another laughs softly in his sleep. The noises weave together into something that feels both alive and ancient. An odd little detail catches your attention before you drift off. One of the sailors has tied a small bell to the end of the bowsprit. It rings faintly with each tilt of the ship, like a heartbeat. When you ask him about it in the morning, he smiles. "Keeps the bad dreams from climbing aboard," he says. Modern researchers often describe pirates as brutal, reckless men, and yet here, in the glow of lantern light, they seem gentle in their own way. The music, the jokes, the stories, these are their medicine, their memory. They build a world out of sound because the sea takes everything else away. When the last notes fade, silence wraps around you like a blanket. The sea hums softly beneath the hull, and the wind sighs through the rigging. You close your eyes, half drunk and half dreaming, and the rhythm of the ship rocks you towards sleep. In that quiet, You think about how strange it is that laughter and grief sound so alike in the dark. Perhaps that's why pirates sing to confuse the two, to keep their hearts from breaking completely. You listen until the music fades into the pulse of the ocean, a sound that feels older than memory itself. The morning after the singing fades, the ship feels heavier. The laughter of the night before has thinned into a wary quiet. The captain's flag still stirs in the breeze, black fabric rippling against the pale sky. Beneath it, the crew moves with measured caution. Everyone knows that freedom has limits, even here. The articles keep the ship running, but when someone breaks them, justice arrives swift and cold. You sense tension in the air long before you learn why. The quartermaster's voice rings out sharp across the deck. All hands aft, judgment time. The phrase sends a ripple through the crew. Men abandon tasks and drift toward the stern, curiosity and unease etched into their faces. A sailor stands in the center of the deck, wrists bound, eyes hollow. You recognize him as Rook, a man known for his quick temper and quicker tongue. Beside him lies a small open chest. Inside are coins that should have gone to the common fund. The sight makes your stomach tighten. Theft among pirates is not a small matter. The quartermaster steps forward, his expression unreadable. "You all know the rule," he says. "Every man's share belongs to him, and no man steals from another. We sail by a code, or we die like dogs." He nods toward the bound man. "You'll have your say, Rook. Speak." Rook lifts his head. "I didn't take it," he says hoarsely. "Found the coins loose in the hold. Meant to return them." His words sound weak, swallowed by the murmur of the crowd. Pirate justice, for all its ferocity, is strangely democratic. According to surviving accounts, captains rarely passed sentence alone. The crew decided guilt and punishment by vote. It was a rough form of equality, and often it worked. The quartermaster turns to the men. "You've heard him. What say you?" Voices rise. Some call for mercy, others for blood. The captain listens in silence, his face calm but unreadable. You notice the carpenter, usually quiet, shaking his head. "He lied before," he mutters. "He'll lie again." The words carry, and the crowd begins to turn. When the shouting dies, the quartermaster raises his hand. Majority rules. His tone softens slightly, though his eyes stay hard. The articles say a thief is marooned, a cask of water, a pistol, and the mercy of God. The men fall silent. Everyone knows what that means. Marooning is death by waiting. The condemned is set ashore on a barren island, left with no company but the sun and the sea. It's not cruelty for its own sake, it's order. A ship without trust cannot survive. The crew prepares in grim silence. The small boat is lowered. Rook's hands are cut free so he can row, but no one meets his gaze. The captain approaches him last. "You had your chance," he says quietly. "You chose your fate." He places a pistol and a flask in the man's lap, then steps back. You watch as the boat drifts away, the oars slicing through the water with slow rhythm. The figure grows smaller, then vanishes against the glare of the sun. No one speaks for a long time. Later that evening, the mood aboard is subdued. The air smells of pitch and rum, but the usual laughter feels forced. The crew eats in silence, each man avoiding the other's eyes. You sit near the bow, staring into the dark water, listening to the creak of the hull. Somewhere below, fish flash silver in the lantern light. One of the older sailors sits beside you, lighting a pipe. The smoke drifts between you, thin and blue. "You did right to stay quiet," he says softly. "We all have to sometimes. Too much pity and you'll find yourself rowing next." He exhales slowly, his face lost in shadow. Still, it eats at you, always does. Modern historians often describe pirate discipline as harsh but necessary. Without authority backed by fear, mutiny was inevitable. Yet there was a strange fairness in their cruelty. Punishments were clear, consistent, and agreed upon by all. In an age ruled by tyrants, that counted for something. As night deepens, The wind picks up. The sails flap and settle again. The ship rocks gently, and for a while, no one speaks above a whisper. A few men begin to sing softly a slow, mournful tune with no words. The melody floats across the deck like a prayer. You think of Rook, alone somewhere under that vast dark sky. Maybe he's already fired his pistol into the air, defiant to the end. Or maybe he's still rowing, waiting for dawn. The thought lingers, heavy and cold. Before turning in, the captain speaks quietly to the crew. "Remember what we are," he says. "We chose this life. We chose each other. That means living by our own hand." His voice carries not anger, but weariness. You see in his face what leadership costs, how justice and loneliness are often the same burden. When you finally lie in your hammock, the ship's motion rocks you gently, but sleep won't come. The ocean whispers just beyond the hull, endless and uncaring. You wonder if freedom always demands such high payment, and if anyone truly gets to keep it. Outside, the stars burn like cold fire, and the sea sighs softly in reply. The next morning arrives quiet, too quiet. The sky glows pale and clean, but something heavy lingers in the air. You can feel it in the way the men move, slower than usual, eyes avoiding one another. The sea has taken one of their own, and though no one says it aloud, guilt drifts among them like mist. By mid-morning, the lookout calls down, his voice cracking the stillness. "Sail to starboard!" The tension that's been pressing down suddenly shifts into alertness. Men hurry to their posts, the captain climbs the quarterdeck, and the sound of creaking wood fills the air as everyone turns toward the horizon. At first, the ship ahead looks peaceful. Its sails are white, its hull tall and heavy. A merchantman, most likely, moving slow under full cargo. But something else glimmers, a faint line of colour waving from her stern. A flag of surrender, white as foam. The captain lowers his spyglass and narrows his eyes. "Not yet," he mutters. "Let's see if she means it." You soon discover that what follows battle is often stranger than the fight itself. When a ship surrenders, silence replaces the roar of cannons. The crew stands ready, hands on ropes and weapons, but the tension becomes almost unbearable. As you draw alongside, the merchant vessel looms above you, its paint chipped and sails sagging. A man appears at the rail, hands raised high. "Mercy!" he shouts, voice trembling. Behind him, sailors huddle together, wide-eyed. A few women clutch children close. The sight cuts through the adrenaline like a blade of ice. The pirates cheer softly, relieved that no blood will be spilled today. The quartermaster leads a small boarding party, you among them. The two ships bump gently together, and you climb across, boots thudding on unfamiliar wood. The smell of tar and fear fills your nose. The merchant captain meets you on deck, his fine coat damp with sweat. He looks proud but broken, the kind of man used to command now forced to beg. "Take what you must," he says quietly, "but spare my crew." The quartermaster nods, his voice calm. "We're thieves, not murderers." According to surviving testimonies, many pirates followed an unspoken rule when taking prizes: avoid unnecessary killing. Dead sailors bring no ransom, no witnesses to spread the tale of mercy that might make the next surrender easier. It's practical compassion, born of self-interest, but it keeps more men alive than cruelty ever did. The loot is modest this time. Barrels of flour, bolts of cloth, a few chests of coin. You help carry them across, trying not to meet the eyes of the trembling merchant sailors. One of them mutters a prayer under his breath. Another, a boy no older than 16, stares at you as if trying to memorize your face. As the last crate is loaded, a small cry breaks through the still air. A little girl, hiding behind her mother, clutches a wooden doll missing an arm. She looks straight at you and says softly, "Please don't hurt Papa." The words twist in your chest. You shake your head and answer gently, "No one will." The mother nods in silent gratitude. The quartermaster sees the exchange but says nothing. Some things need no words. When the pirates return to their own ship, the captain orders the vessels to part. The merchantmen wave weakly, their ship slowly turning away, its sails catching the wind again. The ocean swallows the distance between you as if erasing what just happened. Back aboard, the mood is strangely subdued. The crew works in silence, stacking barrels and counting coin. The usual shouts and laughter are missing. You hear someone whisper, "The sea doesn't like mercy. It'll come back to balance the scales." The superstition feels heavier now than ever. At dusk, the captain gathers everyone. The sunset burns orange behind him, painting the waves with fire. "We showed mercy today," he says. "Remember it. Kindness doesn't weaken us. It proves we still choose who we are." His tone is calm, steady, but his eyes are distant. Later, as night folds around the ship, the crew sits in small groups, sharing quiet drinks. The air hums with low voices. One man wonders aloud whether those they spared will speak well of them or call them devils anyway. Another shrugs. Doesn't matter. The sea tells her own stories. Some modern researchers note that pirates cultivated reputation carefully. Tales of brutality spread fear, but rumors of mercy could coax surrender without a fight. The truth lay somewhere between myth and strategy. For you, though, the memory of the girl's eyes stays sharp and real. Before turning in, you lean against the rail, watching silver waves flash in the starlight. The sea feels peaceful now, almost forgiving, yet deep down, you sense its indifference. To the ocean, mercy and cruelty weigh the same. Only the tide remembers the moment before it washes it away. The bell rings softly for the night watch. Footsteps echo on the wet planks, steady and rhythmic. You close your eyes, letting the sound lull you. Somewhere out there, the merchant ship sails free, its lantern glowing faintly in the dark. You hope they remember the promise of that quiet parting. You hope it meant something, but the wind shifts, and all you hear is the whisper of waves returning to their endless work. Days blur together now, each one a blend of blue sky, rolling sea, and the creak of wood that never stops. The horizon stretches like a promise that never arrives. Life at sea feels endless, yet something has changed. The wind carries rumors, quiet words spoken between men who no longer laugh so easily. You hear it first while scrubbing the deck. The British Navy is hunting again. The captain confirms it by midday. "A fleet has sailed from Kingston," he tells the crew, voice even but cold. "They've declared war on our kind. No quarter given." His words ripple across the deck like a chill wind. The men shift uneasily, muttering prayers and curses under their breath. By the early 18th century, empires had begun to tire of their own monsters. The same governments that once encouraged privateering now called it piracy. Former heroes became outlaws overnight. According to naval dispatches from 1718, the king's proclamation offered pardons to those who surrendered and gallows to those who didn't. Many pirates accepted mercy. Many more vanished before they could decide. The quartermaster gathers the men. "They're hunting us from the Carolinas to Jamaica," he says grimly. "We'll need safe harbors, quick trades, and sharp eyes. Any man thinking of deserting should do it now." No one moves, though you can see the fear simmering behind every face. By dusk, the ship sails into shallower waters. You can smell the faint sweetness of land again, mixed with the sour tang of smoke. A lookout points to a cluster of lights flickering along the horizon. "Port ahead," he calls. "Could be Nassau," but the captain shakes his head. "Nassau's under royal control now. It's a trap." The truth feels heavy. The Republic of Pirates, that brief experiment in freedom, has begun to crumble. Where once stood a haven of thieves and dreamers, now sits a British garrison flying the Union flag. The Empire has reclaimed its wild children. The next few days are a blur of secrecy. You sail by night, running dark, lanterns extinguished. Every sound feels amplified, the whisper of the sails, the splash of oars, the sigh of the wind. The crew speaks in hushed voices, as if afraid the sea itself might betray them. One evening, while patching a rope, you hear the older sailor named Finch telling a story to calm the younger ones. Used to be, he says, the governors turned a blind eye, took their share of the silver and said nothing. But now they hang men for less than a loaf of bread. He spits into the water. Progress, they call it. He isn't wrong. Reports from the Caribbean colonies describe gallows built in every major port, their beams blackened by sun and salt. Pirates were no longer curiosities, they were examples. Some were left hanging for days as warnings to passing crews. Still, the hunt has its limits. The sea is vast, and the pirates know her moods better than any admiral. You hide in narrow channels where coral gleams beneath the waves like teeth. You drift silently behind uncharted islands, sails furled, waiting for the patrol ships to pass. The silence feels like prayer. One night, the lookout spots a British frigate cutting across the moonlit water, sails full and bright. The crew freezes. The captain orders, the lanterns doused. The ship glides through shadow, every man holding his breath. The frigate passes within sight, its cannons black and gleaming. You can see figures moving on its deck, unaware how close their prey lies. When it finally vanishes into the dark, the entire crew exhales as one. The next morning, the captain calls a meeting. His tone is calm, but his eyes burn with the strain of command. The age of the free sea is ending, he says. We can fight until the sea takes us, or we can disappear into her. Each man will have to choose before long. You feel the weight of those words settle into you. Freedom, you realize, is not something the world allows for long. It's borrowed, fragile, and always comes with a price. Later that day, you help unload cargo at a secret inlet, trading sugar for powder and salt fish. The men work quickly, whispering as they go. A local fisherman brings news. Several pirate captains have already surrendered in exchange for pardons. Some even turned hunter themselves, using their knowledge to chase the very men they once called brothers. That night, as you lie in your hammock, sleep feels far away. The creak of the ship sounds like distant footsteps, and the soft hiss of waves becomes the murmur of ghosts. You think of Nassau, once bright with laughter and smoke, now silent beneath the king's flag. A scholar writing years later would describe the fall of the pirate republic as inevitable, but here in the dark it feels more like betrayal. The sea hasn't changed, only the men who claim to own it have. When dawn comes, the horizon is washed in pale gold. The captain stands by the helm, face unreadable. We'll head south, he says quietly. Madagascar, maybe, or beyond. Somewhere the law forgets to look. His words carry a flicker of hope, or perhaps defiance. You look out at the endless expanse of water, the light shimmering like fire on its surface. For now, the ship sails on, hunted but unbroken. The world grows smaller each day, yet somehow the horizon still feels infinite. The farther south you sail, the quieter the ocean becomes. The wind loses its sharpness, and the air grows thick with heat and the scent of salt and rot. The sea no longer feels like a battlefield but a mirror, flat and endless, showing only the weary faces of those who refuse to surrender. The ship drifts through silence, every man alert for the sails of an enemy. By now, word of the royal fleets has spread through every port and hidden cove. The pirates call them the Hunters, great ships with clean decks, trained crews, and the authority of kings. Their captains carry pardons in one hand and nooses in the other. They promise mercy to those who kneel, and death to those who don't. It is midday when you first see one, a shape on the horizon, too white, too steady. The captain spots it through his glass and swears softly. Frigate, he says. 30 guns, maybe more. The crew stiffens, eyes fixed on the distant gleam of sails. You feel the pulse of fear rise through the deck. The captain gives quiet orders. No cannon fire unless I say. We'll slip her shadow. The men obey, hands moving fast but soundless. Sails are trimmed, ropes drawn taut, the ship angled with the wind. You hold your breath as the frigate grows larger. Its hull is dark against the bright water, and its flags flutter high royal colours, proud and cold. The two ships pass within sight. You can see the British Marines lined along the rail, their coats red as spilled wine. For a moment, it feels as if the whole ocean is holding its breath. Then the frigate turns, angling toward you. Someone must have caught a glimpse of the weathered black flag folded along your side. The hunters have found their prey. The first cannon blast shakes the air apart. Splinters fly, sails shudder, and the crew erupts into motion. "To arms!" the quartermaster shouts. "Run out the guns!" You rush to your station, hands trembling but sure. The sound of thunder returns, echoing across the sea as both ships fire. Smoke swallows everything. The deck becomes chaos again. The smell of powder burns in your throat. Men shout orders that vanish into the roar of guns. Through the smoke, you glimpse the enemy's hull closing in, its cannons flashing like lightning. Water sprays up in tall columns where the shots miss, but not all of them miss. One ball tears through the rail, throwing a man backward. The captain's voice cuts through the storm. "Boarding hooks ready!" His face is streaked with soot, his coat torn, but his eyes blaze with the calm fury of command. The pirate's only chance is speed. A single broadside from the frigate could split the ship apart. You and a handful of others grab grappling lines, hurling them across the gap. The hooks catch. The ships collide with a crash that rattles your bones. Men leap across the rails, shouting, blades flashing. You follow, breath burning in your chest, feet landing on the enemy deck. For a heartbeat, the world becomes noise and motion. Pistols fire, swords ring, and boots skid on blood-slick wood. You fight because there is nothing else to do. Somewhere behind you, a man screams. Somewhere else, another laughs wildly, even as he falls. The battle lasts minutes, maybe hours, it is impossible to tell. When it ends, smoke drifts over the water like fog. The British frigate limps away, wounded, but alive, its flag still flying. Your captain stands at the rail, chest heaving. "We live another day," he says quietly. The cost is clear. 3 men dead, several wounded. The deck is splattered and scarred. The carpenter moves among the injured, binding wounds with strips of canvas. The surgeon's hands shake as he pours rum into a cut that will not close. No one speaks of victory. Survival is enough. At dusk, the crew gathers in silence. The bodies are wrapped in cloth and weighted with shot. The quartermaster recites a few rough words, and the men slide their shipmates into the dark. The sea closes over them without a ripple. You watch the water, feeling both grief and strange gratitude. In this life, dying quickly is a kind of mercy. Later, while cleaning the deck, you hear quiet voices near the helm. The captain and the quartermaster speak in low tones. "They'll keep coming," the captain says. "Sooner or later they'll catch us," the quartermaster answers. "Then we make sure we're worth the chase." Some researchers say that by 1720, the age of true piracy was already fading. The great captains were dead or captured, the rest scattered, hunted to the ends of the world. Yet listening to the captain's voice, you sense that this spirit will never vanish entirely. The sea has a way of keeping its secrets alive. That night, the crew lights no lanterns. The ship moves like a ghost across the black water. You sit near the bow, watching the horizon pulse with distant lightning. Each flash illuminates the scars on the sails, the weary faces around you, the stubborn glint in every eye. Freedom has become a dangerous word, but no one aboard is ready to give it up. The wind sighs softly, filling the torn canvas again. The ship presses on, wounded yet unbroken, a dark shadow slipping toward whatever dawn dares to rise. The sea turns colder now. Even the wind feels sharper, carrying the faint metallic scent of rain. The ship drifts in uneasy silence, her hull bruised from battle, her crew quieter than before. Some men mend torn sails, others sit by the rail, staring at the horizon as if waiting for an answer that will never come. The black flag hangs limp, its edges tattered, its meaning heavier than ever. It happens one night when the moon is thin and pale. The air feels wrong. You wake to muffled voices near the captain's cabin, low and tense. You cannot hear the words, only the tone tight, angry, fearful. When morning comes, the truth spreads through the crew like spilled powder. Someone has betrayed them. The rumor is simple and deadly. A man among you has sent word to the royal fleet, offering safe passage in exchange for pardon. No one knows who, but everyone looks at everyone else with new suspicion. The air crackles with it. Even the captain's usual calm seems brittle. He calls the crew together after breakfast, standing on the quarterdeck with his hands clasped behind his back. "If there's a traitor aboard," he says, his voice steady, "speak now, and you'll be set ashore alive." No one answers. Only the sound of waves fills the silence. He waits, then nods once. "Then we sail as we are, and the sea will sort it out." That day drags on, thick with unease. Every glance feels like accusation. Men whisper in pairs, eyes darting. You feel the strain building like storm pressure. By evening, the tension finally breaks. Two sailors lunge at each other near the mainmast, shouting accusations of betrayal. Fists fly, blades flash, and suddenly the deck explodes into chaos. The quartermaster and several others rush in, separating them with the butts of pistols. "Enough!" he roars. The crew freezes. The captain steps forward slowly. His face is calm, but his voice carries iron. "There will be no mutiny on my deck." He orders both men tied and confined below until morning. The rest of the crew disperses in uneasy silence. You hear someone mutter, "We're already dead men anyway." The words hang in the air long after their speaker is gone. That night, rain begins to fall, soft and relentless. The ocean heaves under a low grey sky. You lie awake in your hammock, listening to the sound of water dripping through the deck beams. The creak of the hull feels like a sigh. Sleep refuses to come. At dawn, the captain makes his decision. The accused men are brought before the crew, pale and trembling. He questions them one by one, but both deny everything. The quartermaster opens a small chest and pulls out a folded scrap of paper sealed with wax. It was found hidden near the helm. The message, written in neat script, contains coordinates and a single promise: mercy in exchange for capture. The evidence is enough. The captain studies it for a long moment, then says quietly, "The sea does not forgive betrayal." His tone is almost gentle, but his eyes are like glass. The two men are executed swiftly, dropped into the waves with weights at their feet. The water closes over them, and the ship sails on. You stand at the rail long after, staring at the calm surface. The others drift away, but the image stays in your mind, the small ripples fading until the sea looks untouched again. It strikes you how easily the ocean hides what it's given. Later, the quartermaster finds you and sits beside you. His voice is low. "There's always one who thinks he can outsmart the tide," he says. "The trick is, the sea doesn't bargain." He lights a short pipe and exhales. "You'll learn that in time." Some historians suggest that by the end of the Golden Age, the line between pirate and informer blurred beyond recognition. Desperation drove men to turn on each other. Bounties offered by governors grew higher, and loyalty became a luxury few could afford. The brotherhood of the sea began to fracture. By sunset, the rain clears, leaving a washed, colourless sky. The wind picks up again, and the ship moves faster, slicing through the gentle swells. The men work in silence, but their movements are smoother now, as if the act of punishment has steadied them. The captain stands at the bow, his coat whipping in the wind, staring into the endless grey. When darkness falls, he joins the crew by the mainmast. "You've all seen what betrayal costs," he says quietly. "But remember this: Loyalty is the only treasure the sea cannot steal. The men nod, murmuring assent, though the fire in their eyes has dimmed. You lie awake later, feeling the ship's slow rhythm beneath you. Somewhere, a lantern flickers, casting thin light across the deck. The air smells of rain and salt and old fear. You close your eyes and wonder how much longer this fragile world can hold together. Outside, the ocean murmurs softly, patient as ever, waiting for the next secret to swallow. The days grow hotter as the ship drifts farther into the southern seas. The water shines like polished glass beneath a sun so bright it burns your eyes. The crew moves slower now, their laughter returning in small bursts but without the wildness it once had. The world has narrowed to the ship, the sky, and the sound of waves brushing the hull. In the evenings when the heat softens and the air turns gold, the men tell stories again. But these are not stories of raids or treasure. They are legends, myths that have floated across oceans like ghosts. Someone mentions a name you recognize from whispered songs in taverns. Blackbeard. Every pirate knows his legend, though few knew the man. They say his beard was so thick he tied slow-burning fuses into it before battle, so smoke would curl around his face like a demon's crown. Some claim he could fight 10 men at once, others that he never killed unless cornered. The truth, as always, sits somewhere between myth and fear. A sailor named Briggs leans forward, his eyes bright in the fading light. "I saw his ship once," he insists. "The Queen Anne's Revenge. She came out of the fog like judgment itself. Cannons on every side. Flag black as midnight. He didn't need to fire. We just turned and ran." The others laugh, but no one calls him a liar. Stories like these keep the sea alive. They travel faster than any wind. One man tells of a ghost ship that sails under the moon, crewed by the drowned. Another swears that Stede Bonnet, the so-called gentleman pirate, still haunts the Carolina coast, his laughter echoing through the fog. Historians later wrote that this was the beginning of legend replacing memory. The Golden Age was ending, and the survivors, few as they were, became symbols rather than men. In coffee houses across London, people whispered about romantic rogues and noble outlaws. The truth, the hunger, the rot, the blood, all of it sank beneath the waves of imagination. The captain listens quietly to these stories, saying nothing. His face is turned toward the horizon, but his eyes seem to be looking elsewhere. When he finally speaks, his voice is low. The stories make us larger than we are, but the sea doesn't care for legends. It only remembers bones. Later that night, you find him alone near the helm. The stars stretch wide above, bright as silver pins. "Do you think they'll tell stories about us?" you ask without meaning to. He smiles faintly, the corners of his eyes creasing. "They'll tell something. Whether it's true or not doesn't matter. We live only as long as someone keeps talking." The thought settles in your chest like a stone. The idea that your name might echo, even falsely, feels both comforting and terrifying. You wonder how many of the men around you secretly crave that same immortality, the kind carved from rumor rather than marble. The next morning the sea is calm again, so still it looks unreal. The lookout reports nothing but open water in every direction. You climb the rigging for the first time in days, needing the wind. From high above, the world feels endless. The ship below looks fragile, a speck of wood adrift on an ocean without mercy. As the sun rises, you think of the voices that will tell this story one day. Perhaps they will paint pirates as villains, perhaps as heroes. Maybe they will forget that you existed at all. Yet in this moment, high above the creaking masts, you feel more alive than you ever did on land. The salt burns your lips, the wind pulls at your hair, and for a heartbeat, the horizon feels close enough to touch. That evening, the crew gathers again. Someone has carved a crude face into a block of driftwood and sets it on a barrel. The sea god, they call it. One by one, they toss bits of coin, buttons, or shells into a bowl before it. Not for worship exactly, but for luck. So, we don't vanish, the cook explains. Every sailor wants the sea to remember him kindly. A peculiar calm follows. Even the usual bickering fades. The men sit quietly, passing a bottle from hand to hand, their faces lit by soft lantern glow. You realize they are not thinking of the next raid or the next storm, but of something smaller and more human. How to be remembered. How not to disappear. Modern scholars sometimes say that the myth of piracy outlived its truth because people needed the dream of freedom more than its reality. The dream was easier to love. Yet as you watch the men around you scarred, tired, laughing softly in the dark, you think maybe the myth is not entirely wrong. There is a kind of freedom here, fleeting but real, carved from danger and defiance. When you finally lie down, the ship rocks gently under a sky filled with stars. You close your eyes and hear faint singing, someone humming the old tune about the sea and the devil's share. It fades into the wind, blending with the hush of the waves. The legends are already forming, you realize. They begin quietly, in whispers and laughter, while the sea listens and remembers. By the time another week passes, the ship feels older. The wood groans a little more. The ropes creak like tired bones. Salt has eaten into every surface, and the men's faces look carved by wind and time. Yet something strange has begun to happen. The past, once heavy and near, is drifting into story. The quartermaster starts keeping a small journal, writing by lantern light in the cramped cabin. For those who come after, he tells you when you ask. His handwriting is uneven, smudged with salt, but his words are careful. He records not just battles and storms, but the small things too, the way the cook sings when he's drunk, the jokes traded at dawn, the color of the sky before a squall. If we're to vanish, he says softly, someone should know how it felt to live. That same day, a diver from the crew climbs down into the water to check the hull. He surfaces holding something unexpected, a piece of coral tangled with rusted metal and a coin fused inside it. The coin gleams faintly in the sun, worn smooth by years underwater. He laughs, tossing it to the captain. Proof the sea keeps her secrets, he says. The captain turns it in his palm for a long time before slipping it into his pocket. Maybe one day, he murmurs, they'll find ours the same way. That evening the crew gathers near the bow. The carpenter, who has taken to carving in his spare time, has finished something new, a model of their ship, no larger than a loaf of bread, made from driftwood and scraps of sailcloth. It is rough and beautiful. He sets it on the railing, letting the lantern light play across its tiny masts. A memory that floats, he says simply. Then, after a pause, he nudges it into the sea. They watch in silence as the little ship drifts away, its lantern reflection trembling on the waves. Someone begins humming softly, the same melody that carried through the storm nights before. The sound spreads, until even the captain hums with them. It is not a song of victory, but of endurance. Modern researchers would one day recover objects like these from the sea floor. Carved figures, spoons etched with initials, bits of jewelry fashioned from coins. Each fragment tells a story of lives balanced between lore and legend. Archaeologists debate whether pirates buried their treasures or simply lost them, but the truth may be simpler. The sea took what it wanted. You begin to feel time loosening its grip. Each sunrise looks the same as the last, yet you sense the world changing beyond the horizon. Empires rise, ports are fortified, gallows are built, and the era that gave birth to men like you fades into memory. But here, aboard this ship, life continues, steady and strange, as if the ocean itself refuses to let you go. The quartermaster shares his journal entries aloud some nights. His voice is rough but gentle, and the men listen quietly. He writes about how the ship smells when rain begins to fall, about the way the sea glows with green fire when the plankton bloom, about the sound of laughter carrying farther over water than on land. Historians might not care about that, he says with a shrug, but the sea might. One night, a young sailor asks if they'll be remembered as monsters. The captain looks up from his cup. Maybe, he says after a moment. But every monster has a story. Better to be remembered badly than not at all. The answer settles over the group like fog, half comfort, half curse. As dawn approaches, the horizon brightens. The first rays of sunlight catch the surface of the water, turning it gold. You feel the warmth on your face, and think about how many mornings have looked exactly like this. How many more will follow, long after your ship is gone. The world will keep turning, you think, and somewhere, children will still whisper the names of pirates. They will sing about hidden treasure, about ships that vanished into storms, about flags that frightened kings. The truth will be lost beneath layers of song and story, but maybe that's enough. Maybe myth is the kind of immortality the sea grants to those who dared to defy her. As the little carved ship disappears beyond the swell, you close your eyes and listen to the last notes of humming fade into the sound of waves. The sea keeps everything in the end, coins, bones, memories, and you realize that being remembered by her is not such a bad fate. The ocean grows still again, flat as a mirror beneath a hazy dawn. The sails hang limp, and the ship drifts on a sea too calm to trust. The air tastes of iron and rain, the sky heavy with waiting. You can feel it in your chest, the quiet before something ends. The captain stands by the rail, his gaze fixed on the horizon. His coat is faded now, his hat stained with salt. Around him the crew moves in slow, deliberate rhythm. No shouting, no laughter, just the whisper of ropes through calloused hands. The black flag still flies, though its edges are frayed, its colour washed to a dull shadow of what it once was. You hear the bell ring twice. It isn't a call to arms or to meals, but a signal of reflection. The quartermaster gathers everyone mid-deck, the old journal tucked under his arm. His voice is steady but softer than usual. "We've sailed longer than we had any right to," he says. "If this is our last calm, let's face it awake." He opens the journal and reads from it, his words trembling slightly in the wind. He speaks of the men who were lost, of the harbours that once welcomed you, of nights filled with song and smoke. He reads until his voice cracks, then closes the book and presses it to his chest. "The sea will have the rest," he murmurs. Later, the captain takes the helm. The sun breaks through the clouds in streaks of gold, painting the waves with fire. You feel the warmth on your face and realize how tired you are. The ship creaks as if sighing, and a deep stillness settles over everything. It is then that the lookout spots sails on the horizon, small at first, then multiplying, bright and clean like teeth. British flags. The hunters have found you at last. The captain watches for a long time before speaking. "We can run for another dawn," he says quietly, "or we can face them with our colours high." The men answer not with cheers but with nods, silent and sure. They begin to ready the ship, not out of hope, but pride. The guns are loaded one last time. The deck shines from scrubbing, the ropes tightened and coiled with care. The carpenter patches a splintered rail, humming under his breath. Even the cook polishes a knife until it gleams. You can feel the weight of purpose settle over everyone, heavy but calm. Somewhere below deck, the quartermaster wraps his journal in waxed cloth and seals it inside a small cask. "If the sea remembers us," he says, "she'll bring this back one day." He lowers it into the water and watches as it drifts away, spinning slowly in the sun. The enemy ships draw closer. You can hear the creak of their rigging across the still water. The captain removes his hat, brushes a hand through his salt-crusted hair, and smiles. Let them come. The first cannon fires, its smoke curling into the sky. The deck vibrates beneath your feet. The men move with practiced grace, firing, loading, shouting, but their faces are peaceful now. This is not a fight for survival. It is a farewell. The air fills with sound and smoke. The sea explodes into white spray. The smell of powder and flame mixes with salt and sweat. You hear someone laughing wildly above the roar, not out of madness, but joy. And then, through the chaos, you feel the wind shift. The sails fill once more, snapping like thunder. The ship surges forward, cutting through the smoke, alive even as the guns thunder from all sides. For a moment, it feels as if you are flying. When it ends, silence returns. The smoke clears slowly, revealing the horizon painted in gold and crimson. The sea is calm again. The ship's gone. Whether you survived or not, it no longer matters. What remains is the sound of the tide, steady and eternal. You find yourself standing at the rail, the sun warm on your face, the wind soft in your hair. Somewhere deep below, the ocean holds your story.